In 2008, a young woman participated in a wellness retreat that would change her life forever. She was set to return home to her parents, but she came back home from the retreat paranoid, frightened, and convinced someone was out to get her. When making her arrangements to come home, she walked out the door of a local copy center and was never seen again. Today, we're talking about the unfortunate disappearance of Christine Walters. This is Red Web. Welcome back, Task Force, to another episode of Red Web, the podcast all about unsolved mysteries, true crime, and the unknown. It's another January day, another chilly day here, and I'm your resident mystery enthusiast, Trevor Collins. Joining me hearing this case for the very first time, Alfredo Diaz.
If I came back from my trip and I said someone's out to get me, would you believe me?
I don't know, man, because our history of playing games together is that you kind of put these seeds of fear and doubt in my head, and so you're the boy that cried wolf, and you put yourself in that position.
That's true.
So on one hand, I'd be like, you and I need to establish a keyword.
True.
You drop an onomatopoeia on me or something, and I wake up like a Civil War agent, you know?
Right, and you're just like, oh, this is serious. Lock in.
Right. Yeah, dude, this is a very eerie case. And I will say right out of the gate, what helps make it eerie, aside from the already known elements, are the unknown elements. I mean, it is, when anyone goes disappearing, it's so this could happen to anyone kind of energy. It's terrifying.
Yeah.
But this being relatively recent, 2008, one of our more recent cases, is kind of like blurring that line that we kind of draw. Despite it being relatively recent, it has a lot of unknowns, to the point that one of the key elements of the timeline is actually, depending on the source, disagreeable on where she was found before she finally disappeared. So it is definitely one of those darker cases with some interesting theories behind it. But otherwise, this is definitely going to be one of those cautionary tales.
What makes this, at least initially right now, interesting is the fact that it's a case in the modern day, especially like 2008 with technologies. You know, it's progressed a substantial amount at that point, even in 2008. And having little to no evidence on a disappearance. I feel like as technology grows, when you have all these surveillancing and everything is listening and you're being tracked wherever you are with any device you have, etc., being able to disappear in itself is difficult. And so initially right now in my mind, that's what makes this interesting. Not necessarily what happened, but how were they able to leave without a trace?
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. You're right. 2008 is a really interesting time because, you know, smartphones are already all over the place. This for me was like late high school, mid high school. And by that point, touch screen phones were really starting to come online. And so everyone kind of had a camera in their pocket. CCTV has definitely expanded exponentially, but I do think in quieter, smaller, sleepier towns, those have yet to crop up at this time.
Right.
But I think you're right, especially when looking with a more modern lens. It is relatively difficult. If you or I went running off or something happened, whatever, like you said, there is what happened and the motivation behind this disappearance, and we'll talk about that. But there's also how, the logistics. So if you or I, whatever the motivation was, were to just run down the street and off into God knows where, we would be tracked by every door camera, every CCTV in the city. And then whatever these like new law enforcement cameras are that they plop up everywhere. Have you heard about those?
No, I haven't.
Are you talking about flock cameras?
Flock cameras, that's it. That's what they're called.
Oh, for birds.
Yeah. It's for advanced bird watching, you know. You gotta track the migrations. Yes, they are flock cameras, and they are, you know, a big point of conversation right now.
I've seen some of those. I'm like, is it detecting, like, is it a camera for like running a red light, or is it surveillance?
So red light cameras, I've thought the same thing, I believe are illegal in Austin. So we don't have any of those.
Oh.
But they do kind of scan for license plates, faces, and kind of data recognition. That is also an element in the modern day play, is like, you know, it'd be very difficult to just disappear.
You have to have a game plan. You know what I mean? It's not just like you just log out and just be gone. Also weird that cameras that flash and take a photo of your vehicle if you're running a red light are illegal. in the state.
Oh, I don't think they flash. I think it's just,
Or just
you
like,
know.
yeah. I know that in Cali we have those and they do a little flash. And that's how you know it's like,
Oh, do
I
they?
got got."
You know you got got. And then so you just wait for the day that a picture of your car shows up in the mail.
You're like, that yellow was way shorter than I thought it was going to be.
Yep.
But wild to make that illegal in terms of just like red light cameras in a state. Wild.
Well, I think those are very interesting initial gut checks and gut instincts on this particular case because, yeah, we will kind of be approaching it from both those angles. But again, you know, there's already frustration baked into the very topic at hand because that's the nature of this show. Unsolved cases, riddled with the unknown, riddled with speculation. There's a lot of room for speculation in this case.
Mhm.
And I will refrain from, I will draw my own line of overly speculating, especially when the case is lightly alive and there are still, you know, numbers and websites and emails that you can reach out to in order to help with a case like this. Because, you know, in modern times, this woman who we're going to talk about today, Christine Walters, would be 40 years old. So, you know, information could still develop. And with that, I want to respect the space of known facts and light speculation. Just you and I kind of having instincts is, I think, okay. But I don't want to start drawing false conclusions, right? That's kind of where I feel. As we dive in, as always, sensitive topics will be listed in the description, and we have a lot also going on in the Red Web sphere. I'll be quick. Wednesday, we're going to hit you guys on redwebpod.com, our Patreon page, with a research outline, as we like to do. For anybody looking at peek behind the curtain to see what I'm kind of going off of, Kat and Jillian have both been our researchers over these many years, and they put together amazing outlines with full of research. Christian and I jump in there adding notes. I kind of fluid things out and script moments, but otherwise it's just a bunch of raw data. So if you want to see what I see in these episodes, come on over. Wednesday, Friday, we have a movie club. It's finally time that we show, Alfredo, we show Christian the movie Cloverfield. Can you believe he's never seen it?
Is there a reason why, Christian? You just went too scary or not my vibe?
Yeah.
I just never got around to it. I remember when it came out, it looked awesome and it looked up my alley. It's just one of those things where you're like, yeah, I'll watch it eventually, and it just never happened. But I love 10 Cloverfield Lane, which we've done in the past for Movie Club. I'm expecting to enjoy this movie. I'm excited to watch it.
Talk about a creature feature. I know you're a fan of them.
Yeah, I feel like for Movie Club, I want to add more monsters and creatures to it. I'm just a big fan of that whole genre.
Dude, I'm so happy we did Frankenstein. That's a hefty movie, but
good.
I needed an excuse. All right. Well, without further ado, a lot of thoughts here at the front, a lot of things happening in Red Web. Let us dive into the case at hand. Fredo, like I said, you're hearing this case for the very first time. Let me know what your instincts are saying as we go through, but let me wind back the clock. We're going to take you back to November 17th, 2008. 23-year-old Christine Walters goes missing from a small town of Eureka, California. Now, of course, as we usually do, when we have a disappearance, we have an image of Christine Walters around the time of her disappearance. A young woman with red hair, and you can see that photo there.
Oh, it's a pretty photo.
Yeah.
Yeah. Young white woman, red hair. She's got just like nature behind her with some pretty purple and white blossoming flowers. And so, okay, a retreat. It makes sense.
Yeah.
You know, showing a photo that aligns with that.
I think there's always something, I almost want to address this elephant in the room. Every time we do a true crime case, there's something unnerving about seeing what's going to happen to anybody, right? True crime is always kind of that weird, macabre, morbid fascination kind of thing. But to see people just living a normal life, again, it reminds you that this is just a regular person, that any of this stuff could befall anyone.
Yep.
Not to put fear out there, but it just like, I want to kind of tap into that feeling for a second, because it's hard to cover these cases for 5.5 years and not like really start to grapple with like the emotions of these cases, you know?
It's hard. And we mention this all the time. We talked about it earlier in the episode. It's like stuff like this like hits close to home because it can happen at any moment, anybody. You have these episodes that are so grandiose where it's like, oh, maybe we're talking about the center of the earth or Poseidon or aliens and or bank robberies, something like this. It's like, oh yeah. Or like, cover like home invasion episodes that we do and stuff like that. It's like, oh my goodness.
Yeah.
Terrifying.
Right. And so, like you said, sometimes it's about the intricacy of the mystery at hand. How did things unfold? What got it to this point? And sometimes it's morbidly about what can anyone glean from what happened, and almost providing like a cautionary tale as to like how this could happen to anybody. So keep your wits about you sort of thing. But also to be aware of ongoing cases, and if you see anything, to be able to speak up about it. Now, prior to her disappearance in California, it is worth mentioning that Walters was born and raised in Deerfield, Wisconsin. She went to attend the University of Wisconsin at Stevens Point and studied botany and ethnobotany, which is a really interesting kind of spin-off of botany. It is basically the scientific study of the relationships between people and plants. Culturally and throughout the years, how plants have been used for medicine, psychoactive elements, and many other things. And I think this is important given this is her interest. I want to flag this because of where we're going. Now, the summer before her senior year, in July of 2008, she took a trip to Portland, Oregon. Originally, she was only supposed to stay for 3 weeks. She would return home, kick off her senior year, graduate, and off to life. However, something happened on that trip, something that sparked something inside her, and she decided that she liked the West Coast so much, she wanted to stay. As such, she made a relatively abrupt decision, on many reports it is said, and moved to Northern California, moving in with some of the friends that she made while on that brief trip. Specifically, she moved to Humboldt County, California in late September of that year. Now, Fredo, I know that this isn't super close. It's like 300 miles north of San Francisco, but I'm curious, being an SF native, had you ever heard of Humboldt County or Eureka, California?
No. Eureka, California I have, not Humboldt County.
Yeah. Just curious. I mean, I don't know what else to glean other than maybe if you knew that it was a...
Yeah, no, it's a far trip up north, especially like for like San Francisco. A lot of times you travel east.
Oh, okay.
Or, you know, because then you get some of the mountains and snow, or you travel south because you get like the coast and LA and the coast towards LA and all that kind of stuff in San Diego. So there's rarely a moment to like travel north unless you go like redwoods and stuff like that.
Yeah, so I guess like going north, you're more looking for a natural escape, hiking, mountain climbing, maybe skiing, I'm assuming.
Yeah.
So is Eureka known as a town like that, or is it kind of just not real on the radar? Or
not really on the radar.
Okay. Interesting. Yeah, it is. I mean, it is a small town.
Yeah.
I don't think I included the population, but if my memory serves, and Christian, double check for me if you don't mind, please. I think it was something to the tune of like a few thousand people, maybe a couple thousand people. So it is a small area.
It's a very small town.
Yeah. And in fact, actually, while Christian looks that up, I want to point your attention, Fredo, to the second image. This is a rough map of the area. It is, like I said, it's kind of zoomed in around Eureka. It has some data points on it. I've kind of roughed them in because as we talk about this case, I really want to provide a visual for some of the key spots we're talking about, especially given that there's a little bit of discrepancy on at least one key timeline piece.
Interesting.
And that will throw you across the map depending on which is closer to reality.
Okay.
Yeah. So right now, if you see the purple, red, and gray pins, those are centered around Eureka. The yellow pin is Arcata. We'll talk about that in a little bit. The green pin, kind of even further north and east, is a small facility that we'll talk about over in Blue Lake. And then way down south is a red pin on Tompkins Hill Road, which again, I'll elucidate you further, but these are the kind of key points we're going to talk about here in Northern California.
Okay. Yeah, it's a nice visual.
The population of Eureka as of the 2020 census was reported to be 26,512.
Okay. I was off by an order of magnitude, but 26,000, you know, a healthy sized town.
That's tiny, man.
I mean, yeah, compared to SF or Austin.
Yeah, that is tiny.
This episode of Red Web is sponsored by SelectQuote. Have you heard of the Slayer rules? These are legal provisions that prevent people from inheriting property or benefiting from the estate of a person they murdered. One of the things they protect is someone getting killed for their life insurance policy. Makes you realize how valuable life insurance is, doesn't it? That's where SelectQuote comes in. For over 40 years, SelectQuote has helped more than 2 million Americans understand their options and get the coverage they need. Over $700 billion in coverage and counting. As a broker, their mission is simple: to find you the right insurance policy at the best price. SelectQuote takes the guesswork out of finding the right life insurance policy. You don't have to sort through dozens of confusing options on your own. Instead, one of their licensed agents will find the right policy at the right price for you, comparing plans from trusted, top-rated insurance companies to find a policy that fits your health, your lifestyle, and your budget. And they work for you for free. I love the options that SelectQuote offers people, giving you the opportunity to find the type of life insurance policy that works for you, especially because that is something that is so heavy and stressful to dig into, and SelectQuote's there to help. Life insurance is never cheaper than it is today. Get the right life insurance for you for less and save more than 50% at selectquote.com/redweb. Save more than 50% on term life insurance at selectquote.com/redweb today to get started. That's selectquote.com/redweb.
Okay, so like I said, she's moved to this area seemingly very quickly. What's interesting is that we don't know details, and I won't speculate, but something of great interest must have happened on this trip. I know the Pacific Northwest is stunning, especially for somebody interested in nature. I can't imagine the allure to be any greater than the Pacific Northwest. But so on the cusp of her final year in college, she decides to kind of leave and move to this area. Now, when she was on her vacation in Oregon for those 3 weeks, her parents report that she called pretty frequently. Called the parents to let them know what was going on, giving regular updates about the trip, things she was doing. Everything seemed pretty fine, pretty ordinary. However, once she moved to California, her calls became less frequent, sporadic, according to some reports. I can see that happening as you kind of enter a new normal, but it is worth thinking about at least. This is kind of out of character as far as her parents seem to be concerned, hence why they kind of mention it throughout many reports. So now living in California, it's worth mentioning that she didn't have a steady job, and it appears that when she did call home on those few occasions, she was asking for financial help. We don't know if that is the pure and only nature of those calls, if that was the main reason why she called, but we do know, at least to some degree, those few and far between calls did include, hey, I could use some financial help. Now, of course, despite these challenges, it seemed clear to those who spoke with Walters that she loved her life there. I mean, by all accounts, it seemed the reports coming back home were that she was super engaged with the area, enjoyed her new friends, and enjoyed the nature of it all.
Yeah, so she was happy with her decision. I mean, like many young people, it's like you maybe move or whatnot, and you're still figuring out your career and your job, and so you might have some financial struggles, and so obviously you like your parents are like, no, I'm like, hey, I need a little help. I'm still figuring it all out.
Sure.
Yeah.
Trailblazing a new path, kind of almost on a whim, it seems like.
I couldn't do it. I'm not built that way to just pick up and be like, I'm going to just start and go here. And
I'm gone.
Yeah.
That's tough.
It's tough.
It's tough for anybody, especially when you don't have that solid financial foundation. So props to the parents there, honestly. Now, friends and family kind of reiterate this. They're saying that she was raving about the natural beauty of the area. The earthy lifestyle she adopted seemed to suit her quite well. She seemed, when talking to friends and family, that she spoke about the different changes she was making in her life. She adjusted her diet to eating more natural foods. She was shopping for clothes at thrift stores and choosing to go barefaced instead of wearing makeup. So just like one of those things that as you transition into adulthood, you start to find yourself and you start to make those changes. And she seemed to really be grooving with that. And then on November 12th, 2008, things took a surprising, kind of sudden, shocking turn. She was found on the front doorstep of a home in the rural town of Arcata, just 8 miles or 13 kilometers outside Eureka, or about a 10-minute drive if you prefer. So like I said, Eureka is around where I put those purple, gray, and red 6 pins. Arcata is kind of around that lake or that inlet, the bay there, up around that at the yellow pin. And this is where I want to be a little bit honest too about what I'm seeing across the reports. Kat, while researching, mostly saw that she wound up on a front doorstep in a town home kind of on the outskirts of Arcata. Now, I'll talk about this in just a second because I don't want to get too confusing here, but Tompkins Hill Road is said on many other reports to be where she wound up. Tompkins Hill Road on my map is the red black dot down at the very bottom. So you can kind of see that it would be about a 30-minute drive away from Arcata. And so we're talking about 2 distinctly different areas.
Interesting. I mean, when every detail counts, I mean, 30 minutes is a world away, you know?
Right. I imagine at the time, police officers have their facts straight and the investigation is unfolding as it should, according to that. But it's just worth knowing or seeing how the game of telephone can tweak these minor details in retrospect for somebody kind of discussing the case later, even though it's only been about 17 years, to suddenly now it's a lot wider of a net and the truth is harder to discern. So let's talk more about the front doorstep reports and being kind of on the outskirts of Arcata. All kind of reports indicate that she was naked. Some reports say she was dripping in blood. Many reports, almost all of them, say she was covered in scratches. When looking closer at some reports, they're all kind of agreeing that she was scared, confused, unknowing how she got there, knocking on the door, asking the family for help. It is worth mentioning dripping in blood feels very dramatic, and some of the reports focus in on the feet. Not that her whole body is dripping with blood, but rather that her feet were rubbed raw and quite bloody in particular, almost as if she had been running through the woods all night, barefoot, which would scrape you up quite bad. But looking into this further, because again, I'm looking for greater details and I'm really trying to discern the truth through all the different reports. And I saw a missing persons poster that indicated that she was found on Tompkins Hill Road, which is 20 miles south of Arcata. And it's also been listed as rural Arcata or on the outskirts of Eureka. So again, the truth is a little hard to figure out, but when looking even closer, a man named Thomas Louth, who was a private investigator who helped with this case, we'll talk about him in a little bit. On his website, there is an article that lists Tompkins Hill Road as the location that she was found. So that's kind of everything that I've found on the matter. And it's basically anywhere on this map, that main strip of, what is that, US?
Yeah, US 101.
But yes, somewhere essentially in those core areas. We're still in the main drag of Eureka, Arcata, and Tompkins Hill Road, but it is a 20-mile window that kind of shifts the narrative a little bit potentially.
Yeah, I mean, if you're looking for, I don't know, the smallest thing, 20 miles is so much, you know what I mean? If there's a small little burner weapon or something like that, or, it could be anything. Covering 20 miles is wild, as opposed to just like, okay, this house or this street.
It's tough, especially when you mention the idea of, maybe not in this case, a murder weapon, it could be, but any other evidence.
Oh yeah.
It gives you
anything.
A huge window for that to appear in. And as I kind of walk you through the case more, that green pin up in the northeast is going to become more interesting as far as where she was found.
And the green pin, it was like a place, right?
Yeah, it is a place. If you look at the map, you'll see that there's an address there. It is now closed, but, spoilers, we'll talk about it here, but it is the Green Life Evolution Center.
Got it.
But yeah, and that information comes out in the investigation. But now, she is found naked, scratched up, bloody raw feet on the front doorstep of somebody. We know this for a fact, location up in the air. Now, the homeowners, of course, called the police immediately. The police then took her to St. Joseph's Hospital there in Eureka to be treated. That is marked here on the map with the gray pin there. Now, the name of the homeowners is unclear. We didn't want to go digging, privacy, and what have you. But police noted that Walters was frightened and paranoid, constantly saying that she was being chased by somebody or she believed someone was out to get her. And when asked further details about her feelings and what was going on, she was unable to say what exactly happened to her. So it does seem clear that her memory is a haze, but in her haze, whatever drove her through the woods into this house, that fear, that paranoia was still lingering with her now that she had a little bit more of her wits about her. It's just that it seems like whatever this paranoia was like transcending her lapse in memory.
Right. Okay. I mean, just trauma. I mean, she might have just, I don't know, like could experience something. I don't know, kids being young, wanting to be just kind of like with nature and stuff. They could have experimented with like hallucinative drugs, things like that. Or she might have been given something that she didn't know that she, because also she just met these people and then moved out there with them, whatnot. And so you don't know them that well.
Right. These are great instincts you're having.
I just think about that.
But hold on to those thoughts. Those are very, very good thoughts. And interestingly, and almost serendipitously here in my notes, I wanted to talk about how at the hospital, she was drug tested, but her results came back all negative. Now, we don't know what drugs they tested for. And when you look broadly speaking at drugs, recreational or otherwise, many of them stay in the body somewhere between 1 day, 3 days. It all depends on the half-life of the active ingredient of the drug. It depends on your body's metabolism. It depends on what you ate or drank and all of this good stuff. If you did a hair test, spit test, blood test, urine test, it all changes.
True.
But I think the idea here is to give you a bit of a timeline if something were to be found. Now, we don't know the exact timeline on when she was discovered, and so we can't really say, okay, well, her results are negative. What if she was out in the woods for more than a day? Would that have time for some of these elements to be out of her system? Those are the unknowns that are still kind of floating around. And we'll tap into the investigation phase here. But since her system was clean, police decided to take her to the Red Lion Hotel, also in Eureka, that is marked by the red 6 pin there, so not too far away. Now again, we don't know exactly why they took her to a hotel versus her home. You can speculate till the sun goes down, but my only thinking here is that it would give her a private place without anybody peeking in, her friends or any other colleagues. It would be undisclosed, and so she would be safe, right? I think that there's something to that, but otherwise we don't truly know.
Oh yeah, why a hotel? I mean, you would think it's because they're, I don't know, being cautious maybe?
Yeah.
Like to take the time and effort and money to be like, here, I'm gonna put you up in a hotel. I can see myself doing that, right? If someone, it came to me in this shape, I'd be like, okay, let's go to the hospital, the authorities. And if you really don't feel safe in your own place, here's a hotel. I only know it. You only know it. Seems like a good play here.
If you think someone's after you, I'm not going to take you to your known address, where you might also have roommates who might also be suspects. We don't know at this junction, right? Now, it was at the Red Lion Inn that she called her parents, told them that she was ready to come home. I think that makes a lot of sense. And her mother, recalling these conversations, actually says on record, quote, "She was very scared. She wasn't making any sense to me and was acting paranoid. She said she was at some type of ceremony where they blew smoke in her face. She said someone was after her and then she just stopped talking." End quote. This, I think, is a really big break in the case that offers some insight into otherwise the void of knowledge as to what preceded this flight of paranoia and this disappearance to a nearby neighbor or maybe faraway neighbor. Her parents then covered her hotel stay as she made travel arrangements to come home. What made things difficult was the fact that she had lost all of her personal paperwork, her identification, anything necessary to essentially buy trips, a plane ticket, whatever, back home. So as such, her mom had a copy of these things and decided to fax the paperwork needed to obtain a new ID to a nearby copy center. Walters then went to pick up the paperwork on November 14th. And I believe, looking at some of the reports, people at the copy center seemed to think that she was a little on edge, kind of looking out the window, looking over her shoulder. But it's hard to say, are these colored by revelations yet to come? Did they notice this at the time, or is this being filled in by the fact that they are making these reports after they know she disappeared?
Right.
Either way, it does fit whatever it is she's feeling at this time. They said she was kind of acting odd, but I guess they didn't really think too much of it, other than maybe thinking that she was paranoid. She didn't want them to see what maybe she was picking up, which again, it's all personal paperwork, trying to stay private, keep things to herself. But once she received her copies, this would be the last anyone would ever see her again. She walked out of the copy center with her paperwork in order to go get that new ID, in order to go home. And unfortunately, she wouldn't be seen after this day. It was November 14th, and a few days later, she was reported missing by her parents on November 17th.
So this is like, man, you wouldn't think that she would or have the ability to know how, just be like, I'm just going to disappear. I want to start a new life, new identity, or whatever it is, right? Like, I just want to leave. Maybe if all this was just, the main goal was to just disappear. That being said, probably not the case. So then, did someone get to her? Like, if she was to I don't know, if she died on her own, she'd be found somewhere.
Perhaps, yeah.
Perhaps, you know, I mean, it'd be difficult to just be like, I mean, I guess you can go somewhere super isolated and then just dig into a hole somewhere and try and pass away. But I don't know, man. I think the more plausible thing is that like someone got to her, which is kind of scary, you know?
Yeah.
A little terrifying.
Yeah. It's really, I mean, you're kind of right on the money in the sense of like, that is the biggest black box of the case. We don't know motivations. We don't know if she passed, and if she did, if her body could be lost to the wilderness, if it was an accident, if it wasn't, you know, we'll talk more in the theories about kind of some of the popular thinking as to what the situation is based on as much evidence as possible. But you're kind of getting it right on the nose as far as like the impossibility of it all.
It's just, if someone was after me, I'm giving you as much information as possible.
Sure. Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, I'm giving you everything.
Yeah, I mean, unless you think someone's listening in to your phone calls, you know?
Yeah, that's just such an... You're 100% correct. Could be someone listening to your phone calls, stuff like that. But I mean, like, still, I'm just like... And it's a little frustrating, too. And you can't force anything out of somebody. You just don't know if, like, it's real, it's not real. You still take down notes. You still do the process. But... like, just tell me, yeah, I need more. Like, how can I help you? How can I protect you? Is it a person, man, female? Oh man, it's just like, it's like just a little bit of information right there. And
it's always that hindsight too.
Yeah.
You know, it's the stuff that you always want to be like, dang it, if only we knew that part, right?
Yeah.
Or if only we were able to get them to say something here or there. But honestly, and I'll go ahead and put some of my cards on the table. I'll walk you into how this comes to be relevant. But someone who is having a schizophrenic episode, for example, they might even be aware that some of the hallucinations they're experiencing are like hallucinations. But at a certain point, they cave to the hallucination. Like, I have to go check out the window, or I can't stop hearing this voice. And you almost do lose track of what is real or not. And so it can be hard to really relate to that.
That's a good point.
Yeah. And so it's really hard to know what she might have been experiencing. And unfortunately, you know, as the investigation begins here and as it unfolds, of course, they start at home with the friends, the family, anyone who would have known Walters best. And unfortunately, as you can imagine, you know, police had little to no information to go off of because her friends are states away. You know, they might hear about what we've already discussed, but otherwise not the full extent of who she's hanging out with, what she's getting up to, especially given one of these things might be something that you might not be keen to share with friends or family, just given the nature of it. So of course, there's no names, no people, no places to go off of, which makes it very difficult. Though a few days after her disappearance, there was a small break. You know, her backpack was found at Green Life Evolution Center, which was a health store and spiritual center in Arcata. That is the green dot on the map.
So it's found way up there.
Yes, sir. It's at this point in the investigation unclear how or when exactly the backpack got there. I should also say it's unclear when exactly it was found. We just know it was a few days after her disappearance. But this is a major clue.
Do we know this backpack was packed after or before? Ooh. Right? Like, is there items in... I don't know. I mean, depending on the items inside, you can maybe tell.
Yeah, no, that's a great question.
But like, that's very interesting, right? Because maybe it was before, and then it's not just like a possible last known location.
Yeah, no, 100%. It does. I'll say that it does feel like a possible last known location because inside the backpack was her ID and some money.
Okay.
So this could just be like her standard, like this is the pack she carries around. And maybe something, again, I don't want to speculate too far.
Not the photocopy ID, like her actual ID.
Her ID, right? The one that she was like, I've lost it.
Right.
So in my mind, there's two conclusions. Either one, it's a fresh ID and we don't know. And then the backpack wound up after November 14th or so. Or two, which maybe feels more likely, the possible conclusions maybe are endless, but this was left behind. Then she hit a streak of paranoia, run through the woods barefoot, shows up at the house, doesn't remember kind of when she left things, what happened, and therefore that's how it got there. Again, you know, those are the main conclusions, but
there's a lot of possibilities.
Yeah. But what makes this large clue even better, I would say, the owner of the Green Life Evolution Center told police that it was common for Walters to leave her backpack there while she went hiking in the Arcata Community Forest. So we know now that there's at least some level of pattern leaving her backpack here. It's unknown why she didn't bring it with her through the forest. Maybe it's just, you don't want the extra weight, or it's essentially useless items. But it does show there's a habit. It indicates a level of trust, at least with the people or the center itself, which is good to know because of what's to come. Now, typically, she would always return to gather her belongings. This would be the first time, obviously, that she would leave everything behind. Either she forgot it was there. Again, it builds a little bit of a timeline, but it's very, very murky.
Yeah, all like the final moments are kind of like scattered.
Yeah.
It's interesting because then there's all these different moments, but then you could rearrange them in different ways.
So at this point, Walter's parents hired a private investigator named Chris Cook to work on this case after 2 weeks of unsuccessful investigation by Eureka PD. Cook worked in tandem with the police department, and when brought onto the case was very confident that Christine was still alive, still out there somewhere. Frustratingly, his reasoning for this is not well documented, and again, you're finding that trend all throughout this case. Another private investigator, Thomas Loth, who I mentioned earlier, who had that website, discovered that on November 7th, 2008, Walters participated in what's called a tea ceremony, and at this ceremony, Walters and about 20 other individuals are cleansed, so to speak, after drinking a brew made from ayahuasca, a South American hallucinogenic and illegal substance. Of note, the psychoactive part of ayahuasca is known as DMT, which can be detected in the body through a urine test up to 24, maybe even 48 hours after consumption. Again, if this is something that happened preceding her paranoia and winding up on the front porch of someone's house, it kind of gives a loose timeline, but again, with her drug screening being negative, it's all back in the murk.
Yeah, which is hard to figure out, right? Like, is it really, like, we talked about it. Did they do their due diligence? Even then, like, you don't know what to test for specifically, especially since she wasn't divulging a ton of information. So,
I mean, we've seen it in cases before. The thallium poisoning of Zuling.
Oh, yeah.
You know, like in hindsight, you're like, why aren't you testing for thallium poisoning when people are saying that these are symptoms of thallium? But again, in this instance, it's kind of like, all right, let's just run a broad panel. What do you go for? Especially when sometimes there are like really fringe drugs out there that the hospital's like.
Things are like mixed together or put together by someone. You know, their drugs aren't always like, this is the drug. Sometimes people like put it together and add some other things to it.
Or they're like just not, I don't know, popular or common.
True, yeah.
And so the odds are low and, you know, whatever. But again, we won't know because we don't know what was tested for. But coming back to the tea ceremony, this idea of cleansing, it was led by a shaman named Tito Santana. Now, I flagged this name here in my notes because I don't think he ever comes back around as a suspect. I don't know if that's because there wasn't enough information on that matter, but it is interesting because these ceremonies, you know, they have been performed for centuries. This is something that has crossed many cultures, and the intent here is to kind of bring visions, self-realization, the idea of ego death, to merge your consciousness with the greater reality, the universe, and sometimes even purging and vomiting. There's a range of motivations behind a cleansing or a ceremony of this nature. Now, in rare instances, it needs to be noted, right? If an individual is predisposed to a mental illness, you know, sometimes ayahuasca, DMT, or any of these drugs can essentially unlock parts of your DNA, things that you might have otherwise been predisposed to. And again, rare occasions, it can cause depression, mania, or even psychosis or schizophrenia. I don't know the biology behind it necessarily, but it is definitely a possible situation. And again, it's like, okay, well, some of that starts to make some sense if given her kind of paranoia and not knowing how she got on those front doorsteps or what have you. Walters allegedly stayed with the group after the ceremony. So again, this is back on November 7th. She stayed with the group after this ceremony went down, according to Green Life Evolution, until then leaving by herself on November 11th, 2008. This would be the day before she was found naked on that doorstep. Her mother stated on the record that had she known the full extent of Christine's paranoia, she would have flown to California to escort her home.
Right. Yeah.
I don't doubt that for a second.
Yep, not at all. I mean, their family it seemed like they were very much like in contact with their daughter, had a good, healthy relationship. They even helped her when she needed to. I mean, they hired a private detective.
And without getting too personal, this reminds me of a very personal situation that's happened within my extended family. And the level of grief and even regret that comes in a moment like this is almost insurmountable. It's very hard to fathom. And so I really, empathize with her mom in this moment. But also, like, again, you can't fully know everything. And when someone is in a situation like that, it's kind of hard to comprehend. And it is as simple as feeling, man, if only they just said this part, everything might have been different.
Right.
But also, it's so hard to know what was going on in her head at that time.
You don't know. I mean, it's hindsight, right? Like,
right. She's even said, her mom, I should say, has even said that the hospital probably shouldn't have released Christine, but due to the fact that her system was free of drugs and that she was a 23-year-old woman, they were not allowed to hold her against the will.
Yeah, I guess there was they would need right? They would need some motive, or I'm sure there's rules and laws and everything like that. And then she just didn't cross those for them to legally hold her.
Yeah. I think there was a nurse that the mom was talking to who kind of agreed with her, and with hindsight is looking back and saying maybe we could have recognized the situation better and almost kind of kept her for the sake of her own safety. If she was in a scenario or a mental space that she was going to harm herself purposefully or inadvertently, that's a responsibility for the hospital then to kind of recognize that. So again, it's all hindsight. It kind of, to me, the main message here is that it was known that she was paranoid, that something was going on, but she wasn't kind of conveying the full extent, almost masking it a little bit, maybe out of fear, maybe, I don't know.
Yeah, it's difficult.
But as far as the mom and nurse conversations, that's as far as we have on record, because I believe just they couldn't talk any more specifics due to legal issues, likely HIPAA. Once you pass the age of 18, your medical records and all of that it's kind of the confidentiality between the medical practitioners and yourself, unless you, the patient, sign a waiver to otherwise release that.
Yeah.
This episode of Red Web is sponsored by BetterHelp. The new year is an opportunity, but you don't need to be a new person. Everybody has things that weigh them down. Signing up for therapy with BetterHelp can shine a light on what's been heavy and illuminate all the possibilities for the year ahead. It's a small act of courage that can yield big results. After all, you can't reach your goal without first making space for them. Therapy is such a great way to gain an unbiased perspective on your life and help you more easily identify what's been weighing you down so you can focus on the future. BetterHelp therapists work according to a strict code of conduct and are fully licensed in the US. BetterHelp does the initial matching work for you so you can focus on your therapy goals. And if you aren't happy with your match, switch to a different therapist at any time from their tailored recommendations. With over 30,000 therapists, BetterHelp is one of the world's largest online therapy platforms, having served over 5 million people globally. You can't step into a lighter version of yourself without leaving behind what's been weighing you down. Therapy can help you clear space. Sign up and get 10% off at betterhelp.com/redweb. That's betterhelp.com/redweb.
As the investigation kind of concludes, no other evidence surrounding her disappearance was found, and the case, of course, went cold. In March of 2010, Humboldt County Detective Dan Paris told reporters that although they were trying their best to keep the case alive, there was a significant lack of evidence for them to work with. Their hope was that Walters was still alive and willingly left on her own, for whatever reason that might be, but would hopefully maybe return someday. But since then, she has not tried to make contact with anyone, and unfortunately remains missing to this day. But that leads us into the suspects and theories. Again, with so little evidence, it's hard to get into the real nitty-gritty of possible suspects and theories, but there's one really interesting one, a broad blanket kind of theory that we've seen crop up in cases over the years, and then a few kind of mini theories that attempt to answer here. Now, In the 21 years ranging between 1993 and 2014, it's a pretty big gap, but 5 women either were murdered or went missing from Humboldt County during this time. They ranged in ages from 16 to 37, and they include, of course, Christine Walters, but also Danielle Bertolini, Jennifer Wilmer, Karen Mitchell, and Sheila Franks. And because of this, the term the Humboldt Five was coined in order to raise awareness to the missing women in the area and to kind of see if anyone had any information regarding these disappearances.
Right.
It's hard to say. We've seen very strong MOs with serial killers where they do it a certain way with a certain demographic of people. And so like the age range is very tight. The murder spree is pretty consistent or what have you. But in this case, it kind of becomes a little bit more difficult. Not all serial killers operate that way, but the circumstances of their disappearances don't really have common threads. Some believe that the same person may be responsible for some of these, or maybe all of the disappearances, but the only 2 women who appear to have known each other prior to their deaths are Danielle and Sheila, who were last seen with the same man. And so this gets us the closest possible we have been yet to having a suspect. That man is named Jim Jones. And although he was a person of interest in their cases, he was not arrested for any crime. And it's unclear if Jones was questioned about the disappearances of any of the other women, including Christine Walters here in this case. But this is like an interesting wrapper to address an otherwise uptick in disappearances or murders in an area. This isn't the first time we've seen this. The disappearance of Paula Jean Weldon up in Vermont is part of a spree of disappearances in that area that have been contributed to the idea of a triangle. Again, it kind of helps when there's no evidence otherwise. Those trends kind of help us hone in on something.
Right.
But otherwise, usually don't draw any conclusions.
Because you think like if it was a part of these other cases, then maybe you can use the other cases and whatever comes up to apply it here. But also there's a string of murders. Oh man, you just don't know. It's just hindsight,
Yeah.
And then you don't even know if it's a part of it, and if the other murders didn't really seem as consistent from like case to case, then it's all just. But it's interesting.
I mean, it's so fascinating that. Let me know if you've ever heard of this. Being in Northern California, there is an area just south of the map that I've generated in Humboldt County. It's referred to as Murder Mountain because of its sordid past. It appears to be an area that's seen activity from murderers, serial killers, and even marijuana farmers. All the crimes are happening up on Murder Mountain.
What?
Yeah. There's even a Netflix docuseries on this mountain due to the high volume of unsolved crimes happening in this area. And so that kind of, to me, opens up the idea of one of the kind of mini theories we'll talk about, but is there something dangerous in general just by being near nature? The missing 411 cases we talked about where people kind of disappear after cresting a hill. Those I've seen, like, I don't know how accurate it is. I've seen maps though that kind of show underground caves and entrances, and then a map that shows across the continental US the disappearances and how they kind of line up. And so maybe these people are falling into sinkholes or otherwise falling prey to nature, because nature's scary sometimes.
Yeah, nature can be scary, and not you gotta have some form of knowledge to go, and people, it's just, people can just go into nature,
right?
And it's like, not everyone's equipped for that, or not everyone should be going without supervision.
Totally. There's this YouTube channel that I mean, man, it's binge watchable for sure. I think he's lightly retired. It's called Outdoor Boys YouTube channel, and it's a guy, sometimes with his kids, but it's a guy who lives up in Alaska, and he'll just go into the midst of Alaska, off the beaten trail. It's frozen out, and he'll just camp, and he'll show like what he does to survive the weekend or a day or whatever. And he makes it look so easy, but to your point, I know how difficult that actually is to survive the elements, to know what you're up against. I mean, of course, I don't want to skip over the fact that murders and serial killers are also in the area. That can't be addressed for, like, you got tree madness. Like, I don't know how to accommodate for that, but it does make me wonder, with the thick natural preserves around the area, the thick forests, like, yeah, it's so easy to get turned around and lost.
Yes.
I wonder if that's part of this greater puzzle.
I mean, yeah, when you add nature into it, it could totally be that not anyone was involved. But the thing is, the reason why we think someone was involved is the fact that they were saying, someone's out to get me, someone's out to get me.
Right.
So that's why it's so heavily on the table.
I mean, that's a great point. You know, what she's saying is like someone's out there. And so, yeah, like our desire for an answer mixes with the minimal knowledge we have. And so we go, it must be someone else. We must have, that's the cleanest answer, right? And it reminds me of the episode on Christopher Case, who was also saying something similar. Went on a trip to San Francisco, also Northern California, comes back to, I believe, Seattle, Pacific Northwest, terrified that he was cursed, terrified that he... Yeah, and then he dies. And in that case, one of the theories was like heart condition, that one of the kind of signs of a heart attack could be this feeling of impending doom. All that is to say is that, you know, our brains want to see that pattern, but honestly, pragmatically, it's still just as wide open. You know, it could still just as well be the tea ceremony she was a part of. If it triggered anything in her mind to snap into some paranoia, and to what extent that happened, you know, man, it really could go any which way. To kind of close the conversation here on Murder Mountain, I do want to say that area is 50 to 70 miles away from Arcata and Eureka. Murder Mountain is in the south of Humboldt County, while Christine Walters and everything that we talked about here today, mostly the northern parts. So not necessarily part of that. It's not widely believed that the same person, and even with the Humboldt Five, abducted or killed all of them. These are just strange coincidences worth mentioning because otherwise, when you lack stronger theories to go off of, these are the things that kind of end up on the lips of investigators or anybody kind of looking at the case. So with that, now there are just a few kind of mini theories that try to kind of close the gap. You know, again, a lot of these are probably speculation, but with no suspects listed in her case, some believe that Walters might have fallen victim to simply unfortunate circumstances. Some online have even speculated that the Green Life Center that we were talking about showed signs of cult-like activity. It doesn't exist any longer. I've seen online kind of amateur investigators talking about it on Reddit, trying to figure out more about this facility and try to figure out, were there kind of sinister things going on behind the scenes? Was she kind of being coaxed in by some sort of cult? Or was it that a tea ceremony just went awry, that something happened that they weren't equipped to help with, and so she ended up kind of on her own in a bad way, you know? And either way, you know, it doesn't change the fact that they did something that caused it, but they are two different directions, right? Two different energies.
Right, yeah.
Others state, kind of like you were kind of wondering, that she might have left willingly. Whatever the reason is, you know, given her paranoia that someone was out to get her, maybe she left by her own accord and simply never explained why, and never cropped back up again because she didn't want to be found by this person. Who knows, in this kind of like unknown timeline, if there was somebody threatening her. It is possible. You know, I don't want to just throw out her concerns as some sort of mental illness. Like, we just don't know. But it is alarming that she wouldn't contact family. But again, depending on the nature of the paranoia, is somebody going to listen in? Will they find out from the family? Do they need to stay in hiding? All of these things kind of float around my mind. Again, speculation at best.
Yeah, it's speculation. There's not much to go off of, but still, I mean, we have a person that's missing, so something happened.
There is another theory, and I don't know if it's necessarily a theory as much as it is kind of pointing out a core element of this case, but this kind of theory, in air quotes, says that when she disappeared, she was not in a clear state of mind due to her ayahuasca trip. Whether she had another ceremony closer to her disappearance or had lingering effects, if she believed someone was out to get her, it's possible that she tried to hide out somewhere, fell victim to the elements, or ended up in an unfortunate situation. And so the theory makes that conclusion, but I do think at the end of the day, it's probably the crux of the concern here is that a ceremony took place that put her into a different state of mind. We don't know how that lingered or didn't with her, but either way, it's kind of undeniable that that is the key element in the equation here.
It's a huge element. I mean,
yeah.
And it lines up really well for everything that, you know, so it's kind of what I would lean on because it's the most solid ground to stand on.
It's just the conclusion after that is what is theory, right?
Right, yeah.
She's hiding in the woods, trying to stay away from whatever or whoever is after her, and falls victim to the elements. It is, November in Northern California. It's not unheard of for the temperatures to start getting a little hairy. Hypothermia can certainly happen if you're wet, underclothed, especially if you're exposed in the elements like she was on that one night when she turned up naked with no shoes on and everything. Mm-hmm. But the other conclusion, broadly thought of is that, maybe somebody was truly out to get her and that it's maybe a distraction that the tea ceremony happened. But regardless of what that did to her mental state, someone might have actually been out to get her and that her paranoia might have been valid. And if this was the case, it's possible that she went into hiding or unfortunately fell victim to whoever that might have been.
Right.
Ultimately, a lot of speculation in these theories given the lack of evidence. And sadly, the body of Christine Walters has never been found, nor has she herself reached out if she's still alive to her family since her disappearance. Now, this is one of those rare occasions where there is still an active Facebook group, there's posts about it and her disappearance trying to raise awareness. There is a hotline, there are emails, and as always, don't go poking around. Please don't speculate and try to contact investigators, police officers, family members with theories unless you actually know something. And Task Force, you're all great people, I know that, but it's worth saying, unless you know something or stumble into something that could help lead to the discovery of her, it is worth kind of letting it be as it is, letting investigators continue to do what they do and, hoping for the best. But today, Christine would be around 40 years old.
Wow. Yeah, that's a long time. Was it 17 years?
Yeah.
Damn.
Yep. Now, ultimately, I do want to say we cover a case like this for two reasons. One, to raise awareness of a case and the nature of what happens in a case like this, how things can happen all of a sudden, how also facts can be not twisted, I don't want to say that, but misreported on or suddenly become unknown. And it's why we always approach cases from a default position of not knowing rather than assuming things. I always want to make sure that when we analyze that we're respectful in things.
Exactly.
But also to provide a cautionary tale, right? Those kind of go hand in hand, but across the many true crime cases we've discussed in the show, we've seen anything from accidents and misunderstandings to malicious deeds and active crimes. But as with many cases that we've discussed before, we may never truly know what happened to Christine Walters. And that kind of concludes our discussion on the case. Any final thoughts or feelings on the matter, Fredo, before we turn back to some business at hand?
It's just baffling how someone can just disappear without a trace. I know it's possible, at the vast wilderness and gigantic ocean, seas and stuff like that, but for no one to know what happened is still such a feat.
Yeah, it is terrifying, and with a more positive kind of energy, it does make me optimistic. There's a lot of stuff to be said about a surveillance state, so forgive me for glossing over that portion of this discussion, but it does make me wonder the nature of such cases moving forward. In a positive, more hopeful manner, maybe we have the technology necessary to help bring closure to a case like this moving forward, or maybe discover people faster, or maybe prevent things like this from happening again. But at what cost, a lot of cynics would say, right? Yeah. Of course, surveillance is definitely a hot button topic right now, but it does make me wonder. But with that, Task Force, thank you all so much for joining us for yet another true crime episode. I want to give some huge shout outs because, like I said, we are recording this as we enter the holiday season. You guys are in the throes of a chilly January wherever you are. Maybe you're in the Southern Hemisphere and it's summer for you. Fredo just had Hoochie Daddy Summer 2.0. I know that.
yeah. When you're watching this, I came back from Australia, so.
Mm-hmm. But yeah, kind of weird wibbly wobbly time wise here. So I hope you will have had a good time, Fredo. You haven't gone there yet for me, but for Task Force, he's just gotten back. But yeah, some shout outs to our newest buff scientist of the Task Force, Jason Gay. Of course, our weekly buff scientist this week is Zombie Havoc. And then our squonks of the week are Clint from PS3, Dakota, Tucker Did It, and Neo Trickster. Thank you all so much. And everybody else scrolling across the screen right now for your ongoing direct support of the show. It is the number one way we are able to continue doing this after almost 2 years now, Fredo. It's wild. Wild to think about.
It's pretty cool.
But the new year is upon us. That means the remaining stretch goals that we've been working on can now wake up from the holidays with us and we can get back at it. So continue supporting us over at redwebpod.com. Get lots of exclusives every single week, including this podcast, uninterrupted, no ads. But with that said, Fredo, that concludes today's discussion, but I will see you right back here next Monday for yet another mystery.